So what happens when two evangelists get together in the same interview? Stay tuned. Welcome to season 2 of My 3 Questions. My name is Andrew Mayer, and I'm all about experiences. On this show, I reach out to professionals working the experience arena, no matter where they come from. Customer experience, user, patient, even tenant experience have been discussed here. These might be suppliers, they might be consultants or contractors, or even those who consume these experiences. And I round them up here just so I can ask them 3 simple questions, only because I'm interested in their answers. On today's show, I have Jeff Goldberg. He's the senior platform evangelist at Mendix. I recently met with him at the Mendix World in Rotterdam, where we were brought together through some LinkedIn messaging that worked. Jeff, welcome to the show today.
It's great to speak with you, Andrew. Great to see you as well.
Yeah, finally. So a couple of quick warm-up questions here. What is low code, and what role does Mendix have in all this?
Oh boy, what is low code? It's interesting. Low code is actually a lot of things, but specifically with respect to Mendix, it's low code application development. So if you think about how traditional application development, you're writing in a programming language where you're using words and a syntax to actually assemble parts to build an application. In a low-code app dev perspective, we've abstracted that to a higher level and made it visual. So the front end now becomes something that you drag and drop different building blocks or widgets onto a canvas. And that takes care of the HTML and CSS and all of the styling that goes into building an application. On the back end, when it comes to functions, instead of having to write out a function with code, you're dragging and dropping actions that go onto a path. And it's almost like a business process modeling notation or workflow notation that you use to actually assemble those functions. We call them microflows in Mendix, or nanoflows for running on the client. And those functions operate exactly the same, but because they're visual, they give you this common language that anyone can understand. So if you think about when you're a developer and you need to go speak to someone in the business about the application that you're building, and let's say you need to show them a piece of code, for whatever reason you need to do a code review. What you normally would do is you would have to explain to them the language that you actually wrote it in first so that they could understand the framing. And then you could tell them what the function does. But with Mendix, what you can do is you can just bring them that microflow and immediately everybody understands what's going on. And so that's a huge piece of the low-code value is that visual understanding that it conveys to everybody in the process. And then the last part is the abstraction of all of the infrastructure that is required to stand up an application. So things like where you're going to host it, the database that's going to be used, whether or not you're using containerization or cloud capabilities. That's all taken care of for you so that you can go ahead and deploy your application or build out the constructs of your application all in one click. So you can focus on solving the business problem.
I'm rebuilding my website now, and the last time I built a website was about 17 years ago, where it really was not low code. It was HTML and CSS and all those things you mentioned at the beginning there. And now I've gone to one of these big name companies that are all over the place advertising, and it's such a joy to just be able to drag and bring things into it, and not comparing what the Mendix framework for apps are here, but the experience, at least from a designer. I'm not really a designer, but I'm trying to build an experience for others to come and to consume there, is nothing compared to what we used to do. And I think that's pretty similar to what Mendix is bringing into that world of application, at least from the front end, from the designer here.
Absolutely. So if you think of like Wix and Squarespace, right? They offer a flavor of no code or low code as well, specialized in HTML or website development, right? So they make it easy for you within 5 minutes to get a website up and running. If you think about like BI, you think about Tableau or Click or Power BI. When you're dealing with data, those visual tools enable you to take that data and actually turn it into insights that you can take action on in such a little bit of time, because the work that it takes to mash all that data together is abstracted for you. So it's funny when people ask me what low code is, I tend to answer nowadays that there's 31 flavors of low code. Because just so everybody's using the word, everybody's talking about low code or no code. And that's a great thing. But it's important to be specific about what aspects of low code you're taking advantage of.
So I'll put some links here in the bottom of the notes here of this interview here for those who haven't heard about what no code and low code are, and Mendix and the rest here. So links will be there to find out more. And if you spend any time here on LinkedIn, you can easily find Jeff. He's all over the place. He's got posts, he's got videos, he's got even a podcast coming out very soon here. Let me jump into my 3 questions here. The reason we're brought together today. What UX, user experience trends have you been paying attention to recently?
So most recently, when it comes to like user experience, it's really starting to go beyond just graphics, right? So you go back to what you just mentioned a little while ago about building out your website, rebuilding your website, and that's definitely a visual medium. But now we have things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to contend with. And we have different ways of actually communicating with people through text messages, whether that's through iMessage or WhatsApp. So you see this convergence of the customer experience and the user experience coming together. So much so that, even Gartner has taken the tack of not thinking about mobile app development as its own thing anymore, and really looking at multi-experience. And what multi-experience means is that you have multiple channels. And how do you create a seamless user experience that goes for the customer, that goes across all of those experiences? And that's a lot of the conversations that I have is customers trying to figure out, okay, how do I take advantage of these new technologies and make sure that I get that seamless experience across my Alexa device, my Google Home, the customer's cell phone, as well as when they're on their iPad or they're on their desktop.
It's interesting because I work in the communication space, as you know, and we talk about we've had the multi-channel conversation for probably 18 years, actually longer. If you go back into the 90s when email became the second, after we had telephone calls, email, and then chat and all these other, like you and I did right before this interview here, LinkedIn messaging back and forth. There's lots of different ways. We call it multi-channel, and then we morphed that into what we try to call omni-channel experiences. So where it's similar to what you're saying, to where it's seamless across there. But I will be very honest, it's not easy to do. And what we've learned in the communication space, not everybody wants a seamless omni-channel experience. Some people want to have a certain type of experience on a certain type of platform. And if they go to an email or whatever it might be, they're fine with it not being joined up with that little chat I had, or the Twitter direct message I had with your support staff last week, that your email people don't know about that. I'm okay. I mean, if they had it in front of them, that's nice, but that was a different thing. If I had that same problem, I probably would have gone back to Twitter and kept on DMing you, and I wouldn't email you here. So I'm curious to see how this plays out, and that's really interesting. You bring up that Forrester's sort of to combine all that together, saying at the end of the day, and this is the reason I have this video interview series, is it's all about experiences. It's all what we're trying to have, an improved experiences. And I say in the digital space, there's so much potential to take advantage of information, what's called context, all that contextual information about what you've done, where you've been. If I've been in an app, which is built by Mendix, and I've been interacting with it, I've been downloading information out of it, I've been on different pages here, and now I move, like you said, maybe to a voice assistant app to continue something later on. There's a lot of information that can be leveraged and be used, in whether it's seamless in that conversation or it's just known in the back end, so that conversation feels like it's a much more rich, continuous conversation. I guess that's what you're describing here, right?
That's exactly it, right? It's about context. It's about carrying that context through the thread of the different experiences, and that's one of the things that Mendix can bring to bear for these communication platforms. Is if no two interactions with two different people, or even as you were just saying, no two interactions between the different environments are alike, there's that challenge of, okay, how do you how do you bring them to a place where you can take advantage of what may have happened in the past to inform the future? With Mendix, and this is something that we're working on right now, just in a demo case. I have this emergency response application that we've added some artificial intelligence to. But one of the things that I want to be able to add to it is I want to be able to add, okay, now I want to put a video chat in. So sure, I take a picture, AI tells me what the percentage is that it's a fire or a car crash or a cat in a tree. But now I want the dispatch person to say, oh, wow, that is a fire. Let me contact that person immediately on their phone and ask them if they're okay. And there's so much information that's being exchanged. I could go from that app into FaceTime, or I could go into the app into WhatsApp and start to have a conversation and complete the context that started somewhere else. And I think that's where they talk about it, I think, in terms of things and the different things that you bring together that you have to be able to attach in order to drive that context. What's more important is the collection of that data. And this is in some of the research I've been doing for a webinar I'll be doing, but the context of that or collection of all that data, rather, is what's key. And so if you can have one app that surfaces all the different experiences for you and becomes the central collection point, then you've got tremendous value that you can mine from.
It's all, the data is often always there. It's just taking advantage of it at the right time in the right place is a lot of challenges for our customers because a lot of them still live in silos. Where data's here and data's there and data's somewhere else that they don't even own. And that's the challenge, but it's a fun challenge we have in front of us. My second question is, well, we're talking about customers and those who are using and consuming it. What one question do you wish customers would be asking you more often?
Well, in terms of what customers ask me, I think what customers do is they come to you and they're like, I need to use artificial intelligence, or I need BI. And I think, if I can flip the question back, it's more about how you respond to it. And so the question you have to ask back to the customer, where the customer needs the guidance and the help, is what's the problem you're trying to solve, right? I always tell people this is the opportunity to put your product manager hat on. And it's a lesson I learned a long time ago. When I moved into the software industry, I was interviewing with someone, and he said the most important thing you can do so that you can make sure that you end up giving the customer the right thing is asking them, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Let's take a step back from the technology, because technology is just part of it, right? People, process, technology, and systems. Let's talk about who we're trying to help and what we're trying to help them with. And then we can figure out the best way to apply technology to solve their problem, right? And that's, I think when we, from a low-code app dev perspective, or my previous experiences in the BI space, when we talk to customers, that was such an important question, because it got them to actually take a step back, take a pause, and really think about, and then articulate to you, well, I have this process. I have this data, or I have this process, or I have this data and process. And I'm trying to figure out how I either cut down the number of steps or increase the attribution or touch points of that to make for a more effective or engaging experience, or I want to drive some sort of KPI. And from there, you can peel back and figure out what the underlying problems are. And that's the fun part. And I think it's the fun part for the customer, because then they can really see that they can get creative with whatever software you're bringing to the table, because you can explain to them how they can be creative with that software in order to solve their problem. And that's what ends up getting them engaged and excited and making them feel like they can solve the problem.
It's funny because we both work in a tech toolbox sort of industry, right? We both
Mm-hmm.
have our toolkits of things, of whether it's soft, hard, whatever wares we have out there. And often clients do come to us in our respective areas and say, I need this. And I have similar questions, same sort of thing. We need one of those. And I love just turning, from myself and my brain, exactly what you said. But for me, it's like the why question comes up. It's like, why do you need a Band-Aid? Somebody says, I need a Band-Aid. It's like, I of course can give you a Band-Aid. I can give you a low-code framework that's going to, yes, of course I can do this. I can give you a RTC component that's going to, yes, but why? And if we understand a little bit more, I mean, again, salespeople, people in our position, we're consultants at the end of the day. And whether you're selling shoes or ice cream, where I just was 2 hours ago, or technology solutions here, we should be consulting and not just selling. And I think a lot of our clients are not always even aware of some of the potentials that are out there. And exactly as you highlighted at the end there, once they see some of the real potentials, then the sky's the limit sometimes in what actually might be built. And it might not be a Band-Aid at the end of the day that they wanted. It might have been something completely different.
Totally different. Totally different.
So my third question here, simple one for you. If you had more time in the day, what would you do with it?
Oh boy. There's so many things I can't choose. I'd spend more time with my wife. I'd spend more time with my dog. I would ride my bike more. I'd exercise more so I can take off this weight that I've gained over the past year. And I think I would also work to be creative. I love to cook, and I love to learn new things. So that's one of the reasons why I love what I do, is every day I get to play with something different and figure out how it works. And as we've talked about, figure out how we can make it helpful for people to take advantage of. So,
well, I remember when we met in Rotterdam, it was a very quick meeting that some colleagues had set up for us there. And one, I was excited to meet a fellow evangelist. There's not a lot of them running around with this title here. And one of the things at the end of our brief meeting, I said, I was going to reach out to you to be part of my 3-question series. And you immediately said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. But do you remember what your next comment was?
I don't really remember.
You said, well, what are the 3 questions? You said, what are the 3 questions? And I said, I'm not going to tell you. And you're like, I'm not going to be able to sleep until I find out.
Right.
So
that's right.
So finally here, you made it through my 3 questions here. Jeffrey, I appreciate you coming in on the show here today. It's fun always hearing from you. I'll be watching some of the work you've got coming out, the podcast upcoming. Again, folks who are interested in Jeffrey, what he's putting out, Mendix as a low-code application framework there. Follow the stuff in the links here. Go out and search it on the web. Follow Jeffrey on LinkedIn. He puts out a lot of great information. And I really appreciate you for being here today.
Oh, Andrew, thanks for having me. Great to chat with you. Can't wait to see you again soon.
Thank you.